Welcome to our home.
Do you want to hear a poem? Because I want to hear a poem.
I want to hear a poem. I want to learn something I didn't know. I want to say yes at the end, because I'm sick of saying so.
I want to hear a poem about who you are, what you think and why you slam. Not a poem about my poem, because I know who I am.
I want to hear a love poem, a sad poem, an I hate my dad poem, a dream poem, and I'm not what I seem poem, an I need poem, and I also bleed poem, and I'm alone poem, and I can't find my home poem. I just want to hear a poem.
I want to hear a poem about revolution, about fists raised high, and hips twisting in a rumble, like a rumba. Mm-hmm. I want to follow the footsteps of Shay and hear the truth about the days the CIA killed Lumumba.
I want to hear a poem about struggle, so that when I open my mouth, I can step outside myself. I want to listen to no less than the sound of protest in the factories where workers sweat and make Air Jordans and Pro-Keds. Because if you want to take shots at people, target Phil Knight and Bill Gates. Contemplate how they own the products and they got the goods, how they act like they care, but they're just Robin Hoods.
And because every second matters, I want to hear long poems and short poems about time and its limits. Because it took less than 3 minutes to attack Abner Louima, to frame Asata Shakur and destroy Hiroshima, to kill Eleanor Bumpus and Anthony Baez, to gun down Malcolm with bullets they bought from the feds.
I want to hear a poem where ideas kiss similes so deeply that metaphors get jealous, where the subject matters so much that adjectives start holding pronoun rallies at City Hall, because I want to hear a poem that attacks the status quo, that attracts the claps of the cats with the fattest flows, that makes the crowd pass the hat and pack my cap with a stack of dough.
I want to guess your favorite color, then craft rhyme schemes out of thin air. I want to hear a poem about why the statute of limitations for rape is only 5 effing years. I want to hear a poem. I want to feel a poem. I want to taste a poem. Give me your spot on the mic. If you want to waste a poem, we want to hear some poems.
Yes, from you.
That poem was called Want to Hear a Poem by Steve Coleman, who was the 1998 New York City Street Slam Poetry Champion.
The purpose of poetry is to remind us how difficult it is to remain just one person. For our house is open. There are no keys at the doors, and invisible guests come in and out at will.
This is the Polish poet Czesław Miłosz.
And these are some attempts of defining what poetry is. We're not going to do theory, but I'd just like you to have a look at the different attempts. And all these are expressions that poets used.
Can anybody identify any of these without looking in the book? If I read a book and it makes my whole body feel so cold, no fire can warm me, I know that is poetry. Any guesses?
Man or woman? A woman. Poetry is not a turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion. It is not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality. But of course you have to have personality and emotions. Man or woman?
A poet is, before anything else, a person who is passionately in love with language.
Poetry is the opening and closing of a door, leaving those who look through to guess about what is seen during the moment? Man or woman?
Well, there are the answers.
Does it explain it now?
Or should it explain anything? Why is there a gender-related expression? Judgments that we probably shouldn't be making.
And two more here. Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility.
But I think Coleman, the author of the first poem that we read to you, would probably not agree with the in tranquility. He wasn't very tranquil when he was what he was expressing, and I don't think he wanted to be. It was also an expression of anger as well, which is an emotion that's a lot of our young learners might have in them, that we need to give them a way to vent it out. Through their words, it's a good, safe way, maybe.
But is it just feelings? Is it just the language? Poetry is not a matter of feelings, it is a matter of language. You're all language teachers. Does that make you poets? You're good with language. We'll see in a minute, because this is a workshop. So you will have to do a few things eventually. And because our time is limited, more ideas are included in this booklet.
And
so
if you see here, you can see that this is a grade 5 student. And much of the poetry that we have in the booklet with you, they're also taken from grade school students. It was a project that was done in the United States, in the state of Vermont, back in the 1980s when I was living there, and it was through all the schools from kindergarten all the way through the top level of high school. And the book that was printed out contains poetry that's only from children. And a lot of the poems that we have today and you have in the booklet are from children.
And
This one's grade 5.
Yes, and we have included some poetry that belongs to students from Turkey, the ISTEC school. And you'll see more examples in the booklet.
So it's not just native speaking students that can put these poems together. The book of poetry that came out of this project at the ISTEC schools in Turkey, they were non-native speaking children that wrote some fantastic poetry. It's expression of language, their language.
So this, he sees the letters as objects. And here we have several of those objects. Who thinks this is a poem? Okay, can you read it, Lilika?
Should you read it?
I don't know, do I want to read it?
But is it a visual poem that you just see?
Yeah. Okay.
Concrete cat.
It's concrete poetry.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's more just a visual thing. It would be difficult to say where the beginning and where the end is. So, yeah. I chose you because I know how much you enjoy cats. We had a little talk last night.
What do you find? Jeffrey, can you stay with that slide, please? What do you find more interesting here in the way this is written? Yes?
The fact that the mouse is unfinished.
Yes. Why is the mouse upside down? Obviously.
Because of the cat.
Can we please use the booklet a little bit and
Sure.
see another example of the concrete poetry, which, well, it's not easy for me to use these. Page 20.
Page 20, please. Any more books?
Do you see the poem Housewife?
Quicker. Keep going. Don't stop. Don't stop. Go.
Why do you think it's written in a circle? Yes, please.
I just heard someone say it's a vicious circle.
Yes?
Is that for the housewife or the one that lives with the housewife?
Okay, somebody here wants to say something.
There's no beginning or ending in a circle.
So that's why it's a vicious circle.
Yeah. Thank you.
And she's trapped in the center, you think? Okay, that's a more positive attitude. Thank you for mentioning that. What would the male version of this poem be? Would it be a circle?
Or perhaps a flat line?
Okay, I'll leave you to think about that. But poetry is when an emotion has found its thought and the thought has found words. Do you think that here in these concrete examples we have this thing happening?
Or by Plutarch, painting is silent poetry and poetry painting that speaks. It was a poem to look at, not really to try to read.
Or the best words in the best order? Maybe not the circle doesn't have a best order, but the cat, definitely.
Well, maybe if it's about a housewife and it's talking about love, that there is no order to love, it just is, possibly. No beginning, no end, it just exists.
This is a haiku. A haiku is a 3-line poem following the 5-7-5 syllable pattern. And this one is called Hitchhaiku. And it was written by Rakesh Banot.
Who we had hoped would be here today, but due to circumstances, he couldn't be here.
After some years of being happily hitched, the H disappeared. Okay, keep the rule in mind. And the next one is a cinquain. 5 lines long. They have 2 syllables in the first line, 4 in the second, 6 in the third, 8 in the fourth line, and just 2 in the last line. They don't need to rhyme, but you can include rhymes, and this one is called anger. Fury, fast, loud, and hard. Cursing, shaking, building. Dreading I'm reaching breaking point. Madness. So now we'll give you 2 minutes. And we want you to try and write either a haiku or a cinquain.
One or the other. Test your inner poet.
But only in 2 minutes.
Haiku is 5-7-5 syllables. Two, 4, 6, 8, 2. And cinquain was 2, 4, 6, 8, 2. 5 lines, 2, 4, 6, 8, 2 syllables. And usually in a cinquain, that 4th line is a short sentence or a phrase. Usually, it doesn't have to be.
Let's see who the best student is.
I see one there that's happened to be on an iPad. Looks a lot like most of my students. I hope you're writing poetry there.
Yes, of course. Like Luke on the iPad.
You've just been live streamed all across the world on your iPad.
You're ready?
Do you need some help? Does anybody have one? Okay.
Yes, but we're teachers. Isn't that what we do with your students?
Mm-hmm.
I want to have fun. I want days to be happy. My life just with you.
Very good.
Thank you. That was a haiku.
Does anybody have a syncane? Ha 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 ha.
Yes?
We've got a poet over here that
Okay,
he
I'm
has a
bringing...
syncane feeling.
Who wants the mic?
No, he was...
No? No? Okay, and I'm finished.
No, it's terrible.
A terrible unfinished.
Okay. Well, it just starts two, dude. And then I wanted to have every word rhyming, and I got stuck. So it just didn't get anywhere. It was
Okay.
too difficult.
I'm not doing this just to embarrass you. I need this response for a little later. Okay, thank you. Sasha.
Well, in collaboration with Afro, we wrote a poem about Athens. So it's basically haiku. So Acropolis, the ancient Agora rock. I want to come back. Sorry.
Okay, I wish your wish will come true. So, congratulations. Okay. Nobody is singing? Haiku? Okay.
One
We
last
only
one.
have time for one more.
So the title is Youth. Long time ago, when things were restless, reason set in.
Thank you very much.
It can be done in 2 minutes. Doesn't take a lot of time. Give the students a little bit more time, but it can be done, and it's shared and discussed. You'll get a lot out of them.
Go. According to Yeats, literature is blood, imagination, intellect, all running together. It bids us to touch and taste and hear and see the world and shrink from all that is of the brain only. So, this is an approach to literature. Is this what we do as teachers? I have my doubts.
Do we hit them with all their senses and allow them to express all their senses? Or do we oftentimes tell them to sit down and be quiet and stop moving? Too often, many times, and I know I'm guilty of the same, even at the university level. A lot of times I say, quiet down, okay, get back to work. Montaigne, the authority of those who teach is very often an impediment to those who desire to learn.
We share this fear. Sometimes teaching gets in the way of learning, unfortunately. And it shouldn't be this way. And we liked very much what Andrew Wright said in one of his books, at the preface of one of his books. Children are expected to spend so much time learning what has already been found. It is essential that we give our children more time and space to wonder and wonder and to tell us about what they have found in themselves and in life about them. For society to survive and to survive vibrantly, we need minds and hearts able to learn from the past, but also able to respond to the present. So we would like, through this presentation and generally throughout the conference, to try and be more open, more on the subversive side of education, not just following the rules and the canon and killing literature and poetry on the way.
And no disrespect to anybody talking about the concept of e-learning and electronic education and all that stuff, but Julie and I would kind of like to redefine the concept of e-learning, to change the meaning of E back to emotion and empathy and those kind of words, that kind of teaching in the classroom, and letting the students express themselves without a lot of judgment. It seems that we assess almost everything that happens in a classroom, and we need free expression that's free of assessment many times to get them using the language, because it is a foreign language to them. And it's not easy for a lot of them to step up and risk that, and we need to let them know that it is okay.
And we have a clock ticking, so we asked you to write something in 2 minutes. We asked you to write a poem according to rules and everything. You knew the rules, you know the language. Is that enough? And Luke said that he couldn't, and other people normally wouldn't. Why? What else is there? What's the element, the quintessential element of poetry? The muse, the inspiration. And the muse was a goddess in ancient Greece. And these are the opening lines of Homer's Odyssey. Άνδρα μη ένεπε μούσα πολύτροπον, ως μάλα πολλά πλάχθη, επί τρεις ιερών πτολίεθρων έπερσεν. 2 lines.
I was going to read that, but she pronounces it better.
How many lines is the translation? So this means something about the density of languages, what happens when you translate poetry. You can think about that. We're not going to elaborate on that.
And you can also think about this when the students make a mistake and maybe leave a word out or add a word in. Sometimes in translation that happens. And just let it happen. It'll eventually sort itself out. Maybe it will look like that housewife poem and go in circles for a bit, but eventually it will become that straight line of communicative language. Here are 2 poems, one by an American poet and one by a Russian poet on the theme of the muse. We're not going to read them for you, but you can take a quick look at them and you can see that the idea of the muse is timeless, from Homer's time to recent times.
And the muse is well respected across time and space. And maybe this is a kind of activity that you could use with your students. Think of a theme that several poets have used and come up with their actual poems.
And might it be different? Might the muse change gender according to the gender of your students? Here these are 2 female poets and the muse seems to be female in both of them. Is the muse ever a male? I think if you ask a 16 or 17-year-old girl, she might say there are a few guys that inspire her in such ways. Possibly. Why limit it to what history limits us to? It is expression of their ideas.
We have a problem here, and I'm not sure this is going to work, the videos.
No,
so
it doesn't.
we'll leave it, but it's poetry in advertisements, and that's a huge topic. But we have some examples, I think, in the booklet. So we move from the sacred to the profane, when poetry becomes cliché.
And we see this in the world of advertisement a lot, that they take what was once a revered piece of poetry and it becomes an advertisement. Does it lose its poetic essence when that happens? Does it actually become cliché, or do perhaps those of us that enjoy poetry as literature people, maybe not for some of us?
Has poetry been exploited commercially? Like lines, "Oh, my love is like a red, red rose." They have appeared in advertisements and used on Valentine cards.
Oh, my love is like a red, red rose. But what if I offered you like a box of chocolates that said "Made in the Republic of China" on the back after I said that? Well, that was one of the videos.
Yes, yes, true.
Yes.
So is there such a thing as a cliché theme, or do we make it as such?
And might it be different from our generation to our students' generation? Clichés will be very different for them.
The
Now-
alphabet is male and female. If you will know the correct order of letters, you make a world, you make creation.
And this is from Don DeLillo's novel, The Names, which much of it is set in Greece, and a lot of it is set in Athens as well. But
So this is a keyboard.
what
and-
we thought of here is that almost all of our students have devices, whether it be a smartphone or something that has a keyboard on it. since they're always out and readily available, and usually not for classroom purposes, why not give them a classroom purpose? Tell them to try to create a poem using each letter of the keyboard as the first letter of the word, and to work all the way across the first line, or all the way through the keyboard.
Do you think it's difficult? Not really.
It's not as difficult as it sounds. There are two examples in your book that we both took a attempt at it.
Page 11. We tried to do that and it took us like 2 minutes. So,
But it's a good way to introduce the devices in the class for an academic purpose, instead of just having them sort of interfering with the class so many of us complain about. Well, let's adopt them and bring them into class in a positive way and teach the students how to use them in a positive way, a creative way.
so Jeffrey wrote, quiet weather, early rains tempting youthful unions, interrupted. Only parents, adults, should deem fearful. Generations have known love. Zealous X chromosomes vindicated. Bodies now mingle. I'm glad you're impressed. And he did it in 3 minutes. And I did the next one. Queens worshipped evacuated rooms that youth unparalleled insisted on populating. Ancient cities destroyed fiercely. Gasping hostages jolted. King Leonidas' zeal, xenophobic concerns verified. Barbarians no more. Thank you.
They can be done. And that was
They
no
can be
more
done
than about,
easily.
it didn't take either of us more than 4 or 5 minutes to come up with those. I mean, once you look at the keyboard and do it, it can be a lot of fun. It can be a real lot of fun, and it's very creative as well.
And they will like to do it on their mobiles and
And have them
iPads,
send them back and forth to
tablets,
each other
well,
possibly, or...
anything. Okay, this
Once,
will not
again,
work, I'm
another
afraid.
video that doesn't seem to be working for us
But this
today.
is a good idea, a palindrome poem. It starts one way and then it repeats itself in the opposite way.
And
And
if you
it creates a different meaning. So you can Google that because we are unable to play it now for you.
Yes, please do Google this and find it. It's absolutely amazing that a 14-year-old boy wrote this. It's a poem that means one thing in one direction, and then the complete opposite, read the opposite way, word by word. It's very, very impressive. This is taking one of my side interests, photography. And again, using the students' handheld devices, most of them have iPhones, iPads, whatever, that have telephones with cameras. Get them to go out, take a photograph, and then find a poem that works with it. Or to pick a poem and take a photograph that works with it.
She turns them over slowly in her hands, as did the sea sending them to her. Broken bits from the Mazarine maze, they are the calmest things on this sand. The unbroken children splash and shout, rough as surf, gay as their nesting towels. But she plays soberly with the sea's small change and hums back to its small vowels.
And not only is this poetry, but with the whole idea of the children that are playing are the unbroken children, which sort of suggests that she might be broken in some way.
And you can see the title of the poem, A Mongoloid Child Handling Shells on the Beach.
So we both do a lot of work with the No Project and with the Disabled Access Friendly group, and this idea that you could introduce these kind of themes into the class through poetry.
And I think that the word unbroken here, the unbroken children, which is a very neutral word to use, unbroken, it's the most hurtful one in this poem. Because for us there are no broken children, broken and unbroken.
And how many times when you're walking along the beach collecting shells do you keep a broken one? Usually you don't. And it's a powerful, much more powerful image than the words suggest.
We tell of life, we go ahead and say farewell to its birds, which are migrating. We are of a good generation.
And hopefully most of us are teaching future good generations. And if we give them the words that they need, if we give them the weapons, the tools, everything that they need, and probably the most important is language in this getting more and more competitive, unstable world, giving them the gift of language so that they can go ahead and migrate to wherever they need to be, then we're doing our jobs as teachers, as language teachers.
We wish them to help them open their wings. So we also hope that literature and poetry and all these different kind of stimuli will help them raise awareness, become better people, and also help others, and eventually live and lead a better life than we had, hopefully. That's all we want for our children, our students. So we try to help them find strength to open their wings and fly to a better future. Thank you very much for your attendance and your participation.